My husband's best man got drunk at New Year's and said, "Can't believe you're still doing this to her." My husband said, "Not now, man." The best man said, "When then?" I pretended I didn't hear. I was pouring champagne for my mother-in-law, smiling through the numbness that had become my default expression. But something in the best man's voice made my hands shake. The way he said "still" like this was ongoing, not past tense. My husband pulled him into the hallway. I followed. Stood just outside the kitchen door where they couldn't see me. "You need to leave," my husband said. "I'm handling it my way." "Handling what?" The best man shot back. "You've been lying to her for 18 months. She deserves to know." 18 months. The number hung in the air like smoke. What had been happening for 18 months? My mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. My husband's voice dropped lower. "She can't handle the truth right now. Maybe after the baby comes." I looked down at my belly. 7 months pregnant with our first child. What couldn't I handle? The best man laughed bitterly. "That's what you said last year, and the year before that." "She had the miscarriage," my husband snapped. I wasn't going to pile more on. I'd had a miscarriage 14 months ago. We'd grieved together, or so I thought. Apparently, while I was crying myself to sleep, he'd been keeping secrets. Big ones. "You're a coward," the best man said. "And what happens when she finds out you've been stealing from her inheritance? When she realizes where all her dad's life insurance money went?" My legs almost gave out. Dad had died 2 years ago, leaving me $87,000. Money that was supposed to secure our future, pay off the house, and fund the baby's college. Money my husband had insisted on managing because I was too emotional to deal with finances while grieving. "I invested it," my husband hissed. "It's not stealing if it's for the family." "In what? Your girlfriend's boutique?" The best man's words were like bullets. "Does she know about Crystal? Does she know you've been paying rent on that apartment downtown?" Then the front door slammed. I stood frozen in the hallway, one hand on my stomach, the other gripping the doorframe. My entire body felt like ice. A girlfriend, my inheritance, an apartment I knew nothing about. My husband came back into the kitchen, adjusting his shirt like nothing had happened. He saw me standing there and his face went pale. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "Everything," I whispered. "Who's Crystal?" He opened his mouth, closed it, sat down at the kitchen table and put his head in his hands. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." Silence stretched between us. In the living room, the countdown to midnight began. 10, 9, 8. "She's just a business partner," he finally said. "The money, I can explain." "You have until midnight," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. 7, 6, 5. He started talking fast, about an investment opportunity, about how Crystal's online store was going to triple our money, about how he'd meant to tell me once the profits came in. 4. But his eyes kept darting away. His hands were shaking. I'd been married to this man for 6 years, and I knew when he was lying. "Show me your phone," I said. "What?" "Your phone. Show me." He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. In the living room, people were cheering. Happy New Year, kissing, celebrating. I stood in my kitchen, 7 months pregnant, while my husband clutched his phone like a lifeline, and my entire world crumbled around me. "I need to use the bathroom," he said suddenly, standing up. "We'll talk after." "Leave the phone." My voice was steel. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. "You don't trust me?" "Should I?" The question hung between us. Finally, he set the phone on the table and walked out. The moment he left, I grabbed it. His passcode was our anniversary. How sickeningly romantic. I opened his messages first. Crystal's name was at the top. Hundreds of messages. I scrolled through them with shaking hands. The first few were innocent enough. Business discussions about inventory and marketing. Then they changed. "Miss you," and "Can't wait to see you tonight," and "She doesn't have to know." I kept scrolling, found photos. Crystal in lingerie. Crystal in what looked like our bed. No, not our bed. A different bed. The apartment. I clicked on the photo details, taken 4 months ago, while I was pregnant with his child. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I checked the dates of their messages. 18 months. Just like the best man said. This had been going on since before I got pregnant. Since before the miscarriage. While I was grieving my lost baby, he was with her. I opened his banking app next. He'd never given me the login. Always said he'd handle it. Now I understood why. There were payments to an address I didn't recognize. Rent, $2,100 every month for the past year and a half. I did the math. Over $37,000 just in rent. Then I found the bank statements for my inheritance account. The one he'd promised to keep safe. The one that was supposed to have $87,000. The balance showed $3,200. I scrolled through the transactions, withdrawals, transfers, payments to stores, restaurants, hotels. He'd spent almost everything. The bathroom door opened. My husband came back into the kitchen, saw me holding his phone, and froze. "You had no right," he said. I had every right. I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "Crystal, the apartment, my inheritance. How long were you planning to keep lying?" He tried to grab the phone. I stepped back. "Don't touch me." Something in my tone made him stop. "Let me explain," he begged. "It's not what it looks like. It looks like you've been cheating on me for 18 months. It looks like you stole my inheritance to pay for an apartment where you sleep with your girlfriend. It looks like you lied to me while I was grieving my father and losing our baby." My voice was rising now. In the living room, the party had gone quiet. "I made a mistake," he said. "But I love you. I love our baby. Crystal doesn't mean anything. You spent $37,000 on an apartment for someone who doesn't mean anything?" I laughed, but it came out wrong, broken. "You bought her gifts with my father's life insurance money? Money that was supposed to secure our child's future?" His mother appeared in the doorway. "What's going on?" she asked, looking between us. "Ask your son," I said. "Ask him about Crystal." Ask him about the apartment downtown. Ask him where my inheritance went. My mother-in-law's face went pale. What is she talking about? She asked her son. He wouldn't look at her, wouldn't look at anyone, just stood there with his head down like a child caught in a lie. I need to leave, I said. I grabbed my purse from the counter, my coat from the closet. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was crystal clear. Don't, my husband said, grabbing my arm. We can work through this. Think about the baby. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. I am thinking about the baby. That's why I'm leaving. I pulled away and walked out into the cold January night. I drove to my sister's house. She opened the door in her pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. What happened? She asked. I told her everything. About the conversation I'd overheard. The phone, the messages, the apartment, the money. She listened without interrupting, her face getting harder with each detail. That bastard, she finally said. What are you going to do? I don't know. I sat on her couch, one hand on my belly where the baby was kicking. I'm 7 months pregnant. I have no money, nowhere to go. You can stay here as long as you need, my sister said immediately. But first thing Monday, we're calling a lawyer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the messages, the photos, the dates. He'd been with Crystal the night of the miscarriage. I'd called him crying, bleeding, terrified. He'd said he was stuck at work, but his location showed him at the apartment. He'd been with her while I lost our baby. The thought made me physically sick. I spent most of the night in my sister's bathroom throwing up. Stress, the baby, betrayal, all of it churning in my stomach until I had nothing left. At 6 in the morning, my phone started ringing. My husband. I let it go to voicemail. Then his mother called. Then his father. Then him again. Finally, I turned my phone off. By Monday, I had 48 missed calls and 73 text messages. Most were from my husband, begging, apologizing, promising to change. Some were from his family, saying I was overreacting, that every marriage has rough patches, that I should think about my vows. One was from the best man. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. If you need anything, let me know. You deserve better. That message made me cry more than any of my husband's. My sister drove me to a family lawyer that afternoon. Her name was Patricia Volkoff, and she had a reputation for being ruthless. Tell me everything, she said, pulling out a legal pad. I did. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. Do you still have access to his phone records? He changed his password, I said, but I took screenshots before I left. Good. Email them to me. Everything you have. Messages, photos, bank statements, all of it. She made notes as she talked. In this state, infidelity affects asset division. The fact that he spent your inheritance on his mistress is financial fraud. We can also argue he's unfit to have custody given his deception and financial irresponsibility. Custody? The word made my breath catch. She looked at me seriously. You need to think about what you want. Full custody? Supervised visitation? Child support? Alimony? He committed adultery and stole from you. The court will not look kindly on that. I thought about my baby. About raising a child with a man I couldn't trust. I want full custody, I said. He can have supervised visits if the court allows it, but I don't want him making decisions about our child's life. Good, Patricia said. Now let's talk about the inheritance. Your father left that money to you, not your husband. He had no legal right to spend it without your permission. We're going to get every penny back plus damages. Over the next week, I stayed at my sister's house. My husband showed up twice. The first time, my sister answered the door and told him to leave, or she'd call the police. The second time, he stood outside calling my name until the neighbors complained. On day 8, Patricia served him with divorce papers and a restraining order. His lawyer called that afternoon, wanted to negotiate. Patricia laughed and hung up. Let him sweat, she said. We hold all the cards. She was right. I had screenshots of everything. The messages with Crystal, the bank statements showing where my inheritance went, the rental agreement for the apartment, even photos Crystal had posted on social media wearing jewelry I recognized from our bank statements. My husband's lawyer tried to argue it was a misunderstanding, that the relationship with Crystal was purely professional, that the apartment was a business investment. But we had proof, text messages where he called Crystal baby and talked about leaving me once the baby was born, bank records showing Victoria's Secret purchases, restaurant charges, hotel stays. The worst part? Finding out Crystal knew about me, knew I was pregnant, didn't care. There were messages where she joked about me, called me the wife, like I was an inconvenience rather than a person. My husband had laughed along, made jokes about how I was too tired for sex anymore, how pregnancy had made me boring. I read those messages in Patricia's office and felt something inside me break, not my heart. That was already shattered, something deeper, the part of me that had believed in him, in us, in the life we'd built together. That night I went through our wedding photos, tried to remember when it had changed. When had he stopped loving me? Or had he ever loved me at all? Maybe I'd been convenient. A good wife on paper, someone to play house with while he did whatever he wanted on the side. My sister found me crying over the photos at midnight. Stop torturing yourself, she said gently, taking the album away. He's not worth your tears. I wasted 6 years on him, I said. 6 years of my life. You didn't waste anything, she insisted. You loved honestly. He's the one who threw it away. That's on him, not you. The divorce proceedings took 8 months. 8 months of court dates and mediation sessions and lawyers arguing over who got what. My husband tried everything, said I was unstable, said the stress of pregnancy had made me paranoid, said I'd misunderstood the situation. But Patricia was thorough. She brought in the best man to testify. He told the court about the 18 months of lies, about confronting my husband multiple times, about watching him deceive a pregnant woman while spending her inheritance on his mistress. She subpoenaed Crystal, made her testify under oath about the relationship. Crystal tried to play innocent, said my husband had told her we were separated. Patricia pulled out text messages proving that was a lie. Messages where Crystal and my husband discussed my pregnancy, joked about baby names, mocked my morning sickness. The judge was a woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen everything. She listened to all the testimony without expression. Then she asked to see the financial records. Patricia handed over hundreds of pages documenting every dollar of my inheritance and where it went. Rent for the apartment, gifts for Crystal, restaurants and hotels and shopping sprees. Out of $87,000, my husband had spent $79,800 on his affair. When the judge finally ruled, her voice was ice. I find that the defendant willfully and maliciously depleted marital assets for personal gain. He engaged in adultery throughout the marriage, including during the plaintiff's pregnancy and recovery from miscarriage. He showed a pattern of deception and financial fraud that demonstrates he is unfit to share custody of a minor child. She ordered him to repay the full $87,000 plus interest and damages. Gave me full custody of our daughter, who was born 2 weeks before the final hearing. His visitation was supervised, twice a month, pending completion of therapy and parenting classes. She split our other assets in my favor, gave me the house, both cars, and his retirement account. When the gavel came down, I felt nothing. No victory, no satisfaction, just exhausted relief that it was finally over. My daughter was 6 months old when the divorce was finalized. I named her after my father. She had his eyes. Every time I looked at her, I saw what my husband had tried to take from both of us. He showed up to his first supervised visit 3 hours late, missed the second one entirely. By the 4th month, he stopped coming at all. Too busy with Crystal, according to his lawyer. 1 year later, his mother called. I almost didn't answer. I need to apologize, she said. I didn't believe you at first. I thought you were being dramatic, but I know the truth now. What truth? I asked, bouncing my daughter on my hip. He did the same thing to Crystal, she said quietly. Got her pregnant, then started cheating. Spent her money on the new girlfriend. She called me last week asking if this was a pattern. What did you tell her? The truth, that my son is a liar and a cheat, that I raised him better than this, but somewhere along the way he decided other people's pain didn't matter. She paused. I know it doesn't change what he did to you, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry, for not believing you, for making excuses for him. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. After we hung up, I looked at my daughter. She was babbling at her toys, completely oblivious to the drama that had surrounded her birth. She'd never know her father. He'd chosen to walk away from her just like he'd walked away from every responsibility in his life. But she'd know her grandfather through me, through the stories I told her about his kindness, through the inheritance he'd left for her education, which I'd managed to recover, through the values he'd instilled in me about honesty and integrity and doing the right thing, even when it was hard. My sister helped me convert the spare bedroom into a nursery, helped with midnight feedings and diaper changes and all the exhausting newborn chaos. My mother came down from Michigan, stayed for 6 weeks, taught me everything she knew about raising babies. I went back to work when my daughter was 4 months old. My job had held my position, thankfully. My boss was a divorced mother herself and understood what I was going through. The other women in the office became my support system. They brought meals, offered babysitting, listened when I needed to vent. Slowly, life started to feel normal again. Different from before, but normal in a new way. I learned to be happy alone, to find joy in small moments with my daughter. Her first smile, her first laugh, the way she'd light up when I came home from work. On her first birthday, I threw a party. My sister came, my mom, my coworkers, and their kids. We had cake and balloons and more toys than one baby could ever need. As I watched her smash her cake, face covered in frosting, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The doorbell rang during present time. I wasn't expecting anyone else. When I opened it, my husband stood there holding a wrapped gift. What are you doing here? I asked, blocking the doorway. It's my daughter's birthday, he said. I have a right to be here. No, you don't. You signed away your visitation rights 6 months ago, remember? He'd chosen Crystal over his daughter, decided that paying child support was enough participation in her life. I changed my mind, he said. I want to be involved. You can't just show up when it's convenient, I said. That's not how parenting works. Please, he said. And for a moment he looked like the man I'd married, the one who'd promised to love and cherish me. But that man had never existed. He'd been a fiction, a role he played until it became inconvenient. No, I said. You made your choice. Now live with it. I closed the door, went back to the party. My daughter reached for me and I picked her up. She giggled and smashed frosting into my hair. Everyone laughed. In that moment, surrounded by people who actually loved us, I realized something. I'd lost a husband but gained myself back. Lost a marriage but gained my daughter. Lost money but gained the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. 2 years later, I heard through mutual friends that Crystal had left him, taken their kid and moved back to Colorado. He'd done it again. Same pattern, same lies. Some men never change. They just find new victims. But I wasn't his victim anymore. I was a survivor, a mother, a woman who'd been tested and come out stronger on the other side. My daughter is 4 now. She doesn't ask about her father. In her mind, family is me, her aunt, her grandmother, and her stuffed giraffe named Peanut. She started preschool last fall. On the first day, the teacher asked all the kids to draw their families. My daughter drew me with my hair standing up, drew my sister with her glasses, drew my mother with her purple sweater, drew Peanut the giraffe taking up half the page. The teacher pulled me aside after class. I noticed she didn't include her father, she said carefully. Is that something we should address? No, I said, watching my daughter play with blocks in the corner. Her family is exactly who she drew. The people who show up for her every day, that's all that matters. The teacher nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe she'd been through something similar. Or maybe she just recognized that families come in all shapes and sizes, and biology doesn't guarantee love. That night, I hung my daughter's drawing on the refrigerator, right next to her alphabet chart and the grocery list and the calendar marking her dance recital. Normal things, everyday things, the kind of life I'd stopped believing was possible during those dark months of discovery and divorce. Last month, I started dating again. Nothing serious. Just coffee with a man named Joel who works in IT and has kind eyes. He knows about my ex, about the betrayal and the stolen money and the custody battle. I told him everything on our second date because I was done with secrets. Done with pretending. That's a lot, he said when I finished. It is, I agreed, waiting for him to make an excuse and leave. Instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. I'm glad you told me, and I'm sorry you went through that. But I don't see baggage when I look at you. I see someone who fought back, someone who refused to let the worst thing that happened to her define who she is. I cried right there in the coffee shop. Not sad tears, something else. Relief maybe, or hope. The realization that not everyone would see me as damaged goods, that someone might actually appreciate the strength it took to rebuild. We've been seeing each other for 6 weeks now. He's met my daughter twice. Both times he brought her books instead of toys. Sat on the floor and read to her while I made dinner. Didn't try too hard or overstep. Just existed in our space, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My sister approves. He's good, she said last week while we were doing laundry. He looks at you like you're a person, not a project. Is that a thing? I asked, folding my daughter's tiny shirts. It's everything, she said. Trust me. I dated enough guys who wanted to fix me before I found someone who just wanted to know me. I thought about that a lot. About my ex-husband and how he'd never really known me. He'd known the version of me that fit his narrative. The compliant wife who didn't ask questions. The woman who believed his lies because believing was easier than doubting. But that woman died the night I overheard that conversation. The night my entire world shifted on its axis and I had to choose between comfortable delusion and painful truth. I chose truth, and it nearly destroyed me. But I'm still here. Still standing. Still building a life worth living. My daughter will grow up knowing her mother chose her, fought for her, refused to accept less than what she deserved. She'll know that sometimes love means walking away, that staying with someone who hurts you isn't loyalty. It's surrender. The money my ex-husband was ordered to repay, he's been sending $500 a month for the past 2 years. At that rate, he'll have it paid back in 11 more years. By then, my daughter will be a teenager. The trust fund my father left her will have grown, and his theft will be nothing more than a footnote in our story. Patricia, my lawyer, told me I could push for garnished wages, force him to pay faster, but I decided against it. Not because I forgave him, but because chasing that money would mean staying connected to him, continuing the fight, letting him occupy space in my thoughts. I'd rather be free, rather focus on what I'm building instead of what I lost. The house is mine now. I painted my daughter's room lavender, my room sage green, the kitchen bright yellow because why not? It's my house, my rules, my choices. I planted a garden last spring, tomatoes and cucumbers and herbs I can't pronounce but that make food taste better. My daughter helps me water it every evening, gets mud on her clothes and dirt under her nails and doesn't care at all. She's learning that things grow when you tend to them, that patience yields results, that some things are worth the wait. My mother visits once a month, takes the train down from Michigan and stays for long weekends. She and my daughter bake cookies and watch old movies and create memories I never had with my own grandmother. Sometimes I watch them together and feel this overwhelming gratitude, not for what I went through, but for what came after. The best man, whose drunken outburst started everything, sends birthday cards every year. Inside, he always writes the same thing. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You deserved better. Your daughter deserves better. I keep them in a box in my closet. Not because I need the validation, but because they remind me that some people do try to do the right thing, even when it's hard. His wife had their second baby last month, a girl. They named her after his grandmother. He called to tell me, voice thick with emotion. I keep thinking about how different things could have been if I'd said something earlier, he confessed. You can't think like that, I told him. You said something when it mattered. That's more than most people would have done. We talked for an hour. About parenthood and marriage and how scary it is to love someone enough to risk everything. About how his own wife had been cheated on in a previous relationship. How he'd promised her he'd never be that person. How watching my ex-husband lie so easily had made him examine his own choices. You saved my marriage, he said before we hung up. Watching what happened to you made me realize what I had. Made me appreciate my wife in ways I hadn't before. I'd never thought about it that way. Never considered that my pain might have prevented someone else's. The idea settled in my chest. Heavy, but not uncomfortable. A reminder that suffering isn't meaningless if something good grows from the ashes. Joel met my mother last weekend. I was nervous, probably too nervous. But Mom hugged him like he'd already passed some invisible test. Over dinner, she told embarrassing stories about my childhood. About the time I insisted on wearing a tutu to the grocery store for 6 months straight. About how I'd convinced my kindergarten class that I was secretly a mermaid. Joel laughed at all the right parts, asked follow-up questions, engaged with my daughter when she interrupted every 5 minutes to show him her latest treasure. A rock, a leaf, a drawing that looked like a blob but she insisted was a unicorn. After Mom went to bed, Joel and I sat on the porch. The night was warm, summer was lingering, unwilling to give way to fall. Your family is great, he said. They're everything, I agreed. They got me through the worst time of my life. Can I ask you something? He hesitated. Do you ever regret it? The divorce? Starting over? I thought about it. Really thought. No, I finally said. I regret marrying him. I regret not seeing the signs earlier. But leaving? That saved my life. And my daughter's life. So no, I don't regret that at all. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. I was married before, he said quietly. Did I mention that? No. I turned to look at him. What happened? Nothing as dramatic as your story, he said. We just grew apart, wanted different things, got divorced when I was 30, no kids, split everything down the middle, and went our separate ways. That sounds civilized. It was, he said, but also sad. We'd spent 8 years building a life together and it just ended, like turning off a light switch. One day we were married. The next day we weren't. Do you still talk to her? Christmas cards, he said. She remarried last year, lives in Arizona with her new husband and his 2 kids. I'm happy for her. I really am. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd fought for it harder. Maybe nothing, I said. Maybe some relationships aren't meant to be saved. Maybe, he agreed. But I think about it sometimes. About whether I gave up too easily. Whether I could have tried harder. We sat in silence for a while. Crickets chirping, cars passing in the distance. The comfortable quiet of 2 people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. I think, I finally said, that there's a difference between giving up and knowing when something is already gone. You can't resurrect something that's already dead. Is that what your marriage was? He asked. Already dead? I think so, I said. I think it died the first time he chose her over me, maybe even before that. I just didn't know it yet. Joel reached over and took my hand. His palm was warm, slightly calloused from whatever IT people do with their hands. I'm not going to hurt you, he said. I know it's early. I know you have no reason to trust that, but I want you to know that's my intention, to be honest, to show up, to be the kind of person who deserves someone like you. I wanted to believe him, wanted to let go of the cynicism that had taken root in my chest. But trust isn't something you decide. It's something that grows slowly, carefully, one honest moment at a time. I want to believe you, I said, but I need you to understand that I'm not the same person I was before. I'm more cautious now, more guarded. It's going to take time. I've got time, he said simply, and somehow, that was exactly the right thing to say. My daughter's preschool held a parent night last week. All the kids performed songs they'd learned. My daughter stood in the front row wearing a paper crown she'd made in art class. She sang every word, loud and slightly off-key and completely unself-conscious. After the performance, the teacher showed us the classroom, pointed out the reading corner and the art station and the wall where they'd hung all the children's self-portraits. My daughter had drawn herself with a huge smile and yellow hair that stuck straight up. She'd written her name at the bottom in wobbly letters. She's thriving, the teacher told me. She's confident, kind, always helping the other kids. You should be very proud. I am, I said, watching my daughter show Joel her cubby. Watching him crouch down to her level and listen like whatever she was saying was the most important thing in the world. I really am. On the drive home, my daughter fell asleep in her car seat. Joel followed me in his own car, helped me carry her inside without waking her, stood in the doorway while I tucked her in. She's lucky to have you, he whispered. I'm lucky to have her, I corrected. After he left, I sat on the edge of my daughter's bed, watched her sleep, her face peaceful, untroubled. She'd never remember the chaos of her first year, the court battles and supervised visits and financial fights. She'd only know the life I'd built for her after, the stability, the love, the certainty that she mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from my ex-husband. The first message in over a year. I heard you're seeing someone. Just wanted to say I hope he treats you better than I did. You deserve that. I stared at the message for a long time, tried to decide how I felt about it. Anger? Sadness? Nothing at all? Finally, I typed back. I hope you figure out whatever's broken in, not for my sake, for your daughter's. She deserves a father who shows up. I didn't expect a response. Didn't get one. But saying it felt important. Acknowledging that despite everything, I still hoped he'd become someone better. Not for me. Never for me. But for the little girl sleeping in the next room who shared his DNA, even if she didn't share his life. The next morning, my sister called. Mom told me you're getting serious with someone, she said. No preamble. No hello. Just straight to the point. That was her way. It's only been a few weeks, I protested. But you like him. I do, I admitted. He's different. Patient. He doesn't push. Good, she said. You need patient. After everything you've been through, you need someone who understands that rebuilding takes time. You sound like a therapist. I've been seeing one, she said. Did I tell you that? After watching what you went through, I realized I had my own stuff to work through. Turns out watching my sister's marriage explode brought up a lot of feelings about my own relationships. I'm sorry, I said automatically. Don't be, she said. It's been good. I'm learning things about myself, about the patterns I've been repeating, about why I keep choosing men who can't fully commit. We talked for an hour, about therapy and growth and all the ways trauma ripples through families, about how my ex-husband's betrayal had affected not just me, but everyone who loved me, about how healing isn't linear, how some days I felt completely fine and other days the anger would surge back with surprising intensity. That's normal, my sister said. You're allowed to still be angry. You're allowed to have bad days. That doesn't mean you're not healing. After we hung up, I thought about that, about permission, about how much of my energy I'd spent trying to be okay, trying to prove I'd moved on, trying to show everyone that I was fine. But maybe fine wasn't the goal. Maybe the goal was just to keep moving forward, whatever that looked like on any given day. My daughter woke up asking for pancakes. We made them together. She stood on a stool at the counter, carefully cracking eggs into a bowl, getting more shell than egg, but she was trying, learning, growing. When we sat down to eat, she looked at me seriously. Mommy, why don't I have a daddy? My breath caught. I'd known this question was coming eventually, had practiced answers in my head. But sitting there with syrup dripping off her fork and innocent curiosity in her eyes, all my practiced responses evaporated. You do have a daddy, I said carefully. He just doesn't live with us. Why not? Because sometimes grown-ups can't live together anymore. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. She thought about this, chewing her pancake. Does he know about Peanut? She meant her stuffed giraffe. I don't think so, I said honestly. That's sad, she said. Peanut is really important. You're right, I said. That is sad. She went back to her pancakes, apparently satisfied with that answer. But I sat there long after she'd finished, wondering how many more questions like that were coming, how I'd answer when she got older and the questions got harder. Joel came over that afternoon, brought a book about giraffes for my daughter. She shrieked with delight and made him read it 4 times in a row. I watched from the kitchen, making coffee, feeling something warm and unfamiliar in my chest. Not quite hope, not quite trust, something in between. She's going to be asking about him more now, I told Joel later, after my daughter had fallen asleep clutching both Peanut and her new book. My ex, she asked this morning why she doesn't have a daddy. What did you say? The truth, sort of. The age-appropriate version of it. That must have been hard. It was, I admitted. I don't want her to feel like something's missing, but I also won't lie and say he's involved when he's not. Joel was quiet for a moment. My dad left when I was 5, he finally said. I have exactly one memory of him. We were at a park and he was pushing me on a swing. That's it. That's all I remember. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said. My stepdad came along when I was 7. He's the one who taught me to ride a bike and helped with homework and showed up to every baseball game. Biology doesn't make you a father. Showing up does. I thought about that long after he left. About showing up. About consistency. About the 1,000 small ways we demonstrate love that matter more than grand gestures. My father had shown up. Every dance recital, every school play, every birthday and holiday, and random Tuesday when I needed him. My ex-husband had shown up for our wedding, for the Instagram-worthy moments, but disappeared when things got hard. When showing up required sacrifice instead of celebration. I wouldn't let my daughter grow up thinking that was normal, that fathers were optional, that love was conditional. The months passed, summer faded into fall, fall surrendered to winter. My daughter turned 5, started kindergarten, made friends and learned to read and brought home artwork that covered every surface of our refrigerator. Joel became a regular presence, not living with us, but present, reliable, the kind of person who showed up for kindergarten performances and birthday parties and random Tuesday dinners. My ex-husband's child support payments continued arriving like clockwork, $500 a month, a fraction of what he owed but consistent at least. He'd stopped trying to see his daughter, stopped sending texts, just faded into the background of our lives like he'd never been there at all. His mother still called occasionally, checking in, apologizing, sending birthday gifts for my daughter that I accepted because they came from genuine love, not obligation. She'd become an unlikely ally, someone who understood the damage her son had caused and was trying in her own way to make amends. He's in therapy now, she told me one evening. Says he's working on himself. That's good, I said, and meant it. Not because I wanted him back, never that, but because maybe, eventually, he'd become someone capable of having a relationship with his daughter, someone who wouldn't hurt her the way he'd hurt me. Do you ever think about forgiveness? She asked. I think about it, I admitted, but I don't know what it looks like. I'm not angry anymore. Most days I don't think about him at all. Is that forgiveness or just indifference? I think, she said slowly, that forgiveness is whatever allows you to keep living your life without the past weighing you down. By that definition, maybe I had forgiven him, or maybe I'd just moved so far forward that he couldn't reach me anymore. Either way, I was free from the anger and betrayal and all-consuming hurt that had defined those first terrible months. My life now looked nothing like I'd imagined 6 years ago when I'd walked down that aisle in a white dress, believing in forever. But it was good. Different, but good. My daughter was thriving, my career was stable, my family was strong, and Joel, careful, patient Joel, had become someone I could trust. We'd been dating for 8 months when he asked me to move in with him. We were at his place. My daughter was with my mother for the weekend. We'd made dinner together and were washing dishes when he just said it. I've been thinking, maybe we could look for a place together, somewhere big enough for all 3 of us. I almost dropped the plate I was holding. That's a big step. I know, he said. And if it's too soon, I understand. But I'm here most nights anyway, and I love spending time with both of you. It feels right. I need to think about it, I said. It's not just me. It's my daughter too. I have to be careful. I know, he said again. Take all the time you need. That night, lying in his bed, I thought about what it would mean to take that step, to merge our lives completely, to let someone that close again. The thought terrified me, but it also felt possible in a way nothing had felt possible since New Year's Eve, 2.5 years ago, when my entire world had imploded. I talked to my therapist about it, started seeing her again after a year-long break. What are you afraid of? She asked. That I'll be wrong again, I admitted. That I'll trust someone who doesn't deserve it. That I'll put my daughter in a situation where she gets hurt. Those are valid fears, she said. But are they based on Joel's behavior? Or your ex-husband's? I thought about that. My ex-husband's, I finally admitted. Joel has never given me a reason not to trust him. So you're punishing Joel for someone else's mistakes. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm just being careful. Maybe careful isn't the same as punishing. Maybe, she agreed. But be honest with yourself about which one it is. I thought about that conversation for days. About fear and trust and the difference between being careful and being paralyzed. Joel never pushed, never asked if I'd made a decision, just continued showing up, being present, proving through his actions that he was different. 1 month later, I said yes. We found a house together. Not his place or mine, but something new. Something that would be ours. My daughter got her own room with windows that overlooked the backyard. We moved in on a Saturday in early spring with help from my sister and mother, and a truck full of boxes that held our entire lives. That first night in the new house after my daughter was asleep, Joel and I sat on the floor of the empty living room surrounded by unpacked boxes. "Thank you for trusting me," he said. "Thank you for being trustworthy," I replied, and I meant it. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days. Days when I thought about my ex-husband and felt that old familiar anger rise in my chest. Days when I worried about money or my daughter's future or whether I was making the right choices. But more often, there were good days. Days when my daughter laughed until she couldn't breathe. Days when Joel made me coffee without being asked. Days when I looked around at the life I'd built from ruins and felt something close to pride. My daughter is 7 now. She doesn't remember the apartment where we lived with my sister. Doesn't remember the court battles or the supervised visits that her father stopped attending. Her life is stable, full of love, normal in all the ways that matter. Sometimes she asks about her biological father. I tell her the truth in age-appropriate ways. That he wasn't ready to be a parent. That he made choices that hurt people. That she's better off surrounded by people who choose her every single day. Joel has never tried to replace her father, never pushed for that title. He's just Joel, the person who makes her favorite breakfast, who helps with homework, who shows up to soccer games and dance recitals, who loves her not because he has to, but because he chooses to. Last month, Joel and I got married. Small ceremony, just family. My daughter was the flower girl, wore a dress she picked out herself and scattered petals with intense concentration. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, my 7-year-old daughter stood up and said, "I object to not having cake right now." Everyone laughed. The moment was perfect, exactly what I needed after everything. A reminder that life moves forward, that joy exists even after terrible things, that sometimes the best revenge is just being happy. My ex-husband wasn't invited, doesn't know I remarried. I considered telling him, decided against it. He'd forfeited his right to know about my life the moment he chose Crystal over me, the moment he stole my father's inheritance to fund his affair, the moment he stopped showing up for his daughter. His mother came to the wedding, though, cried during the ceremony, hugged Joel afterward, and whispered something to him that made him smile. Later, I asked what she'd said. "She told me to take care of you," Joel said. "Told me she'd never forgiven herself for raising a man who didn't know how to appreciate what he had." "That's not her fault," I said. "I know," Joel agreed, "but she needed to say it, and I needed to hear it. A reminder of what happens when you take people for granted." We honeymooned for a week in the mountains, left my daughter with my mother and sister, and just existed together. No schedules, no responsibilities, just us. On our last night, sitting on a cabin porch watching the sunset, Joel asked me something. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't overheard that conversation at New Year's? If you'd never found out about Crystal?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "I probably would have stayed, kept believing his lies, raised my daughter in a house built on deception. Would you want to change it?" he asked. "If you could go back knowing what you know now, would you stop yourself from overhearing?" I thought about it. Really thought. "No," I finally said. Because that moment, as terrible as it was, saved me. It forced me to wake up, to see the truth, to build something better. If I'd never found out, I'd still be trapped in that lie. My daughter would be growing up thinking that's what love looks like, that betrayal and deception are normal. "So you're grateful?" "I'm grateful for what came after," I clarified. "I'm grateful for the strength I found, for the life I built, for my daughter and my family and you. But I'm not grateful for what he did. That pain was real. That betrayal nearly destroyed me. But it didn't," Joel said softly. "You're still here, still fighting, still building." "I'm still here," I agreed. We flew home the next day, picked up my daughter who'd missed us desperately and had drawn approximately 47 pictures to prove it. She showed us each one in excruciating detail while we unpacked. Her enthusiasm was exhausting and beautiful and exactly what I needed. That night, after she'd finally fallen asleep, I walked through our house, looked at the photos on the walls, the toys scattered across the floor, the coffee cups in the sink, and the laundry waiting to be folded. All the messy, ordinary evidence of a life being lived. This was my revenge. Not anger or bitterness or trying to hurt my ex-husband back, just this. Building something real. Something honest. Something worth having. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, my lawyer. "Saw the wedding photos on your sister's Facebook. Congratulations. You deserved this happy ending." "Not an ending," I typed back. "Just a new chapter." And it was true. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Beginning in a place of strength instead of naivety. Trust earned instead of blindly given. Love chosen instead of accidentally fallen into. My daughter would grow up knowing that sometimes people hurt you. Sometimes they lie and cheat and steal. But she'd also know that you survive. That you rebuild. That the best revenge is refusing to let someone else's choices define your worth. She'd know that family isn't always blood, that fathers are made through actions, not biology. That love without honesty isn't love at all. She'd know these things because I'd lived them, because when given the choice between comfortable lies and painful truth, I'd chosen truth, every single time, and I'd keep choosing it, for her, for me, for the life we were building together. The life my father had tried to secure with his inheritance, the life my ex-husband had tried to steal, the life I'd fought to protect and rebuild and make my own. This was my story now. Not the betrayed wife, not the victim, not the woman who'd been wronged, just me, a mother, a wife, a survivor, someone who'd been tested and came through stronger on the other side, someone who'd learned that revenge doesn't have to be destructive. Sometimes the best revenge is just refusing to be destroyed.